Hello, fun people. I'm Isaac Carlson, and on Following Dreams, I'm focused on exploring the stories of people who are following their passions and achieving their dreams. I want to help inspire you to pursue what you love by hearing how others have done it. Today, I'm talking to two brothers who have established themselves as expert theorists on YouTube in the worlds of Harry Potter, Pixar, Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars. Through years of developing videos for millions of people to watch, they have created a strong community of loving fans, which has allowed them to work with Warner Brothers and Disney and develop their very own meetups and coffee brand. To join the over 2 million subscribers who watch these super brothers on a consistent basis, you can find all of their social links in the description. Welcome the creators of the Super Carlin brothers, Jonathan and Ben Carlin.
Oh, hey, what's up, fun people?
Hey, that was one heck of an intro.
Man, I love it when other people have to intro us. I feel like, man, they always make us sound so much better.
I know. Every time you go and do an event, they ask you to put together, can you guys just give us a little description of you? And it's like, we're fine.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess we're people.
Right.
Yeah. You can put, is that cool, Jay and Ben Carlin? They're people.
They're people.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
What
I mean,
more do you need to
exactly.
know?
Yeah, that's one thing about being able to meet people that you look up to or that do lots of cool things is that you realize that they are just people at the end of the day as well. So I feel like that's something that I enjoy trying to spread to other people, is that you can become these types of people too if you start pursuing it in your own way.
No, I think that's totally true. There's absolutely something to be said. I mean, there's sort of the don't meet your hero sentiment, but then there's also the just meeting other successful people. You will very quickly realize that every single one of them is totally human.
Right.
And
They're just people.
Right. And I think that that's this thing that until you reach a certain level of success, you might not find that you are regularly being placed in an environment to be exposed to those types of people. So
Right.
as a result, everybody just puts all of those people up on this giant pedestal when, I don't know, it's just getting to be able to go beyond that curtain and sort of see the truth.
Yeah, it's always so cool when you go to VidCon or Playlist or something, and you're standing there in the green room waiting for your panel or something, and you're chatting with the other creators, and some of them and you're like, oh my god, that's that person. But then you go talk to them and they're just like, oh, cool shoes, man. And then other people, they might come up to you and you're like, oh, what you've seen my videos? I'm embarrassed.
I'm embarrassed.
I
I shouldn't have done that.
Never mind. Forget it. Yeah.
Who liked your shoes?
Rhett from Good Mythical Morning.
Yeah, I knew the answer to that question I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Not to name drop or anything,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Although I've thought, sorry, I interrupted you, Isaac. I've thought about that moment since, and one of you, Ben's, tips to life is if you're in a conversation you don't know what to say, is to compliment their shoes. And I was like, oh, what if he was just doing that thing?
he was doing Ben's advice thing.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. So for that, to that end, my thought isn't that complimenting someone's shoes is this is just something you can say if there's nothing else to say. I just think that people put a lot more of themselves into their shoes than maybe even they realize. And it's a compliment that, if true, I feel goes a lot further than you might think. It's hey, I love those shoes. And it's thank you. Thank you. I spent a lot of time on these because typically people are going to have far fewer pairs of shoes than they are going to have t-shirts and jeans.
Right.
So
less variety. You got to wear this all the time.
Right.
People it's got to look good with everything. It's
Yeah.
got to always be representing you.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Welcome to this podcast about shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talk about shoes and then meeting famous people and complimenting their shoes.
Exactly.
These are the
Yes.
pro tips to life.
this is how it works.
But the thing that I'm trying to figure out is when you're going on this journey and trying to discover how to make yourself grow and become this famous person, what was getting you excited about growing your channel and doing what you do? And so what makes you excited? What are you guys passionate about?
That's an interesting way, I think, to phrase the question. I don't think when I started on YouTube I was like, oh, my goal doing this is to be famous, or anything like that. And
Agreed.
I almost don't even I don't know. Some people will ask oh, you're famous, and it's sort of I don't know if you have to ask me, right?
I'm not a
I must
household
not be.
name.
Yeah. But no, that's I feel like it's almost like a byproduct of being successful on YouTube is that you end up with that sort of thing. But initially starting out, I think I started making YouTube videos in college, and it was not fandom related at all. It was very comedy based. Like, oh, this is just like a fun way. Like, can I make people laugh? Like, I don't know. That was my initial thing going into
I
it.
funny?
Am I funny? Yeah, like, yeah, it's like validation maybe. I don't know. I had a lot of fun making them. I was like making these little skits, and I always felt like I was like studying communication, and so I had a lot of like exposure to like cameras and editing, and largely it was an extension of like my initial path on college to I was like on the reporter track to be like a newsman. That's what our dad does. But YouTube then sort of became like a way to practice doing all of those things, and I don't know, my friends really seemed to like the video, so I was like, oh, I have to keep coming up with new things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was one of the more shocking things to actually like witness happening as your brother. Like, because I would have known you your entire life, and like there was nothing like you're an outgoing person, like typically around your friends, but I do think you're the type of person who's going to come out more the more time spent around you. So like the average person might not know that you've got this like X factor element to your personality where you'll like go out there and put yourself out there and stuff. So I think when you started making these videos, I like literally almost thought it was out of character. I was like, I can't believe he's doing this. And I was like #1 fan. Like every single time like the video went up, I was like, oh, I'm tuning in right now and I'm going to share it everywhere. And I'm going to text it to my friends to a fault, ultimately.
There's a funny story there.
There's a funny story here. So, and it will lead into why and how I got into YouTube. So that's why we'll tell it here today. But one of the big things that happened was back when Jay started doing this in, what was it, like 2006, 2007? 2009, okay.
Yep.
So you had to be like invited into...
You had to apply for partnership on YouTube.
Sure, and that's when you can start making money on like pre-roll ads. And I think that actually as of present, that is now also a thing, or you have to get a certain amount of viewership.
I think so. For a while, it was like, you're on YouTube, click that monetize button, you're monetized.
Right.
You're not going to get anything.
Right, unless the viral video of your cat chasing a laser pointer goes crazy. But so anyway, Jay all of a sudden starts making money on his videos and he's explaining it to me because I have no idea. And I'm like, oh my God, what a fascinating thing. And he's like, yeah, like if like somebody watches my video and there's an ad that plays before it, then I'll get like a percentage of the money spent to place that ad there. And I was like, perfect. I'll watch all the ads and I'll tell all my friends, like I have been, to watch your videos, to also watch the ads and maybe even click the ads. And you want to know what that did? It blacklisted him.
Yes. Yeah. To this day, my like main Google account, like the email address I use, I cannot monetize videos on that YouTube channel.
Right.
Like still, I'm like, surely they've appealed this by now.
Nope.
And they've like redone. They're like, no, lifetime ban, no monetization.
Right.
So yeah, I basically got ad bombed because YouTube saw that, hey, this person who's getting like almost 900 views on a video is getting 50 ad watches, all in Radford, Virginia. That doesn't sound right.
right. Yeah, like the concentration was too thick. So
yeah. So no warning, boom, ad bombed, basically. And
right.
But it's interesting that you said you didn't recognize me or like it was like out of character, because I had a very similar conversation with our mom once upon a time.
Oh,
where
really?
She was just like, I never knew anything like that was like something that would interest you. Or she was like, I was like an unrecognizable person.
Yes.
And it was just like, that was really revealing to me, because I felt like I had always known, or like that had always existed inside me, but like it's just interesting to me that I got that far in my life without like letting that be represented. And I like wondered back, like, why was that? Like, what was I hiding, or what was like holding me back or something? You know, or like, I don't know, maybe it was like, if we'd been into like drama or something, it would have like really announced itself
like
earlier.
Manifested.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, it's so hard to say. I mean, like the most common advice that any person ever gives about being a YouTuber is like, be yourself. But it almost seems like the very nature of you doing it to begin with was you being yourself.
Right. It was like this way to like genuinely be myself with like all my guards down.
Right. Like dance like no one's watching, except... Like, the purpose is, like, to then let people watch later.
Yeah.
So that's kind of surprising, though, because you were going on the track to become, like, a news anchor.
Yeah.
So there is going to be that type of charisma, but it was, like, something beyond that when you were starting to create videos, that you were, like, tapping into something else that wasn't just, like, a formal presentation.
Yeah, I guess so.
The vulnerability behind trying to be comical, I think, is a lot different than to be a presenter of facts.
For sure.
Sure.
I think so. And especially on YouTube where, like, in person, if you tell a joke and, people laugh, great. And if they don't laugh, you're like, okay, that wasn't a good joke. But on the internet, if you tell a joke to a camera and then upload it, you don't really get to see whether or not that was a good joke. You just sort of have to hope you were funny.
You'll find out if you made a bad joke.
Yes,
but
you'll find out if you were offensive in any way.
Oh,
if you were that people fact checked you to death.
I will tell you that the greatest challenge that I had, like I think my whole life I've always been a people person. That's like where I felt like I could thrive, is like just like the way that I interact directly person to person. And one of the hardest things for me about speaking at a camera is that it gives you no facial expression. It doesn't like give you a little nuanced smile like, I see where you're going with this. That's a good thought. And so for me, getting to the point where I was just comfortable like trying to sell the idea to the camera without any type of visual feedback was the greatest challenge. So my earliest videos, I remember thinking I was screaming at the camera, and you go back and watch it and I'm like full-blown monotone and just
What's up, Jay? I'm Ben.
But like I thought I was being so
like, in
like
your mind,
extra.
it was like, what's up, Jay?
That's yes, exactly. Of course, nobody saw the animated way that you just did that, but that is what I thought I was doing,
Right.
and like the evidence was in stark contrast.
I think it's a slow crawl to be able to get to that point where you can actually get beyond what is needed for the platform with the expression that you need, because you can go back through videos and see the progression of people on YouTube as they become more expression filled.
Well, like one of the common things I think people I used to hear growing up was when if you were listening to the radio, a lot of like if people were like, man, I feel like I could be a radio DJ, and they're just talking, I feel like I would be good at it,
right,
or whatever. And our dad, like I said, he was like in the media business, and his thing was he always knew like the real answer to this one was like, the more you think you can do it, the better they are at it.
Right.
It's like they're so good at it, you think you can do it. That's how easy they're making it. And I think when you get on YouTube, like you're normally probably getting introduced to it by watching the people who are really good at it. And it looks like they're being extremely conversational, and they're just like, hey, what's up? And this is my life. But like, there's rarely any, like most YouTube videos involve some amount of like performing, even if you're just like telling a story or doing what we do and like, coming up with theories and stuff. Like there is a performance element to it, and I don't think people always think that going in. They're like, I'll just talk to the camera. That's what they're doing.
Oh, sure. And there's no doubt about it. Like if I imagine it would be a jarring experience. Like let's say you hypothetically sat down and watched 100 of our videos back to back to back, and then came to like a meetup where you could like see us in person. It could be like, wow, I expected you to be like animated and loud and excited and like never stumbling on a single word ever. And and so much of that is when we sit down, you're coming on a little bit. It's not to say that we're like entirely different people, but
no, for sure.
There's no doubt about it, you're performing.
Oh man, we were sitting at dinner with Isaac last night, and I just asked him to like, tell me about your channel for my vlog. And I saw he did this like I recognized it immediately. He had to like turn his head real quick and like flip into like, I'm gonna present real quick.
right. Here it is.
Exactly.
Isaac, it was
that can be something that I've even experienced, that like my girlfriend's like roommates were like so surprised with how I was behaving. It was like 9 o'clock at night. They're like, why aren't you being like more happy? I thought you were way more extroverted than you are. Because they had seen the videos prior to actually meeting me, and that was how they're introduced. And I'm like, I'm not like a super extroverted person that I'm going to be like ready to just like randomly start talking to people that I barely know at like late at night.
Oh, I know.
Late o'clock at night.
Late o'clock at night. Yeah.
Oh, look at that, 8 o'clock.
Whenever that hour rolls around, I'm just, my head's tilted back on the couch.
Yeah. I think people would find me very similar to that, where, I'm in real life, I'm much more introverted. Like I like having a lot of alone time. And like if we did a Twitch stream one day for like 12 hours when we launched our Twitch channel, and I don't think I've ever noticed as much like the amount of effort it takes to do to be on camera or whatever.
Sure.
Because we were on camera for almost 12 hours in a row that day with like a few minor breaks. But like I remember the moment we turned the camera off and it was like my brain was like, all right, back to normal. It was like it was like literal waves of exhaustion, like pummeled my body, and I was like, I had like immediately had a headache that had not been present like 5 minutes before.
Right.
It was just like, whoa, what? Oh my gosh, I don't know if I can drive home, you know?
Right. It's like you've been tapping into your reserves for so long, but as long as you stayed true, you weren't gonna like fall out of your rhythm.
Yeah.
But then as soon as you walk away from it, that's when it comes crashing into you.
Yeah, Ben's description of you of being someone who needs to like warm up to people, and that's when you finally like start being yourself, is much more of like a description of me, how I behave as well.
See, and the interesting thing about that, and that goes back to me not being able to get the reactions from the camera, is I actually feel like, especially like year one of Super Carlin Brothers, you're going to see like a very muted Ben, a very unenthusiastic character on my upload days. But then on the flip side of that, you'd have Jay, who's just excited and animated and like knew how to perform.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you know us in real life, those roles then get kind of reversed again.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Where that's probably more how I would be if you just like walked up to me in a parking lot and you were like, you know, hey, what's up? I'd be like so excited to see you, and it would be like a big thing. So I do think that we have met people who, and they're like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and that's something that I've heard before from big YouTubers, that to actually be especially a one-man team, like at least you guys had each other, but for people that are on camera alone doing everything, it takes someone who's okay with being isolated and planning a video, recording it on their own, and then editing on their own. That's a lot of time that you have to dedicate to doing something on your own.
Yeah. And that's largely how like our first year of YouTube was, because like even though we had each other and we were like we lived in the same house and stuff.
Sure.
But as far as like the writing and shooting and editing, that was all pretty much solo. It was kind of like, okay, that person's working on their video, just leave them alone in the basement and they'll emerge when it's done.
Right. Yeah. It was definitely one of those things where now I love it the way that we work, because as we're writing a script, we've got like our big whiteboard, and you were asking, I think before, like what parts of it do you love? And the whiteboard meeting to me is always my favorite, because that's the point where it's like, okay, we have this and we have this and we have this, and you know we're circling things and drawing lines and arrows, and I always think of that like Charlie Day post where he's like like pointing to all the like red yard behind him. Yeah, from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That is me enjoying it at my most, because that's like, oh my gosh, like we've just found something, we've discovered something, like we just like cracked a code that nobody's ever thought of before. And
so
that's
like the chance to be able to like completely explore something and go into it in depthly and discover something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's where, you know, like especially if there's ever just like arbitrary information that's given about like a certain character in the Harry Potter series or something, and it's like it doesn't make sense until you start like linking it with all the rest of it, and it's like, oh, that's why we know this one weird thing about that person. Like, that's just the most fun.
What about for you, Jay? What's like your favorite part of the process?
Oh, I like the actual filming. That's my favorite part. Like where we're actually like talking to the camera.
That is my least favorite part.
Yeah.
I dread it. Yeah, completely.
Well, I think because I don't know if this is a part of that for you, but like in the process of writing the video, typically like I very much write in my own voice, and like as I'm writing it, I'll be like I'm almost imagining how I'm going to say it and then writing it. And so like by the time I get there, I've already sort of like planned out how I'm going to say everything when I get to it in the script.
See, and that's funny because my favorite part is the editing part.
Oh, really?
Is finally being able to like put the whole vision into production, because I typically have an idea of what I want to make in the script writing process, and I try to make it enthusiastic in the actual recording process. But I feel like the editing with all of the clips, and you can add music and add all of your like branding to it, that it can finally become something that's like ready to be shown.
Right.
And feel and capture the tone that you're really trying to go for.
And there's no doubt about that. Now, I think that we have had videos before where we've had like this whiteboard meeting, we've had like the shoot, you've had the edit, but like everything is happening in such piecemeal that you haven't got to like experience your full idea delivered succinctly. And that is like what the finished product ultimately is. And so it's like, I'll be telling my fiance about an idea and trying to like explain it to her, and I'm like, oh, but there's this detail over here, but like without this, I can't really show it to you. And like when everything's all in one place and you get it like all in one go, then that's super satisfying, like to have like the ribbon tied around the final product. But I think for me, the reason, like, I think my mind likes solving problems, and so that's why, like, from the script writing standpoint from the beginning, it's almost like once I have convinced myself of an idea, I've solved the problem.
Right.
And then I think part of my problem is that I immediately become bored of it.
You're like, okay.
But that's like step one
Right.
of like 16 steps that
Right.
that lead to finishing the entire project. And so it's like, I'll be like, okay, we did it, we solved it. Oh man, now we have to do all the work.
Well, and then
Right.
the other thing is too is that even if you've completely linked everything that you can convince yourself to do, there's probably more evidence that you have to continue to dive into.
Oh, that's the problem is that, there's so much time, I feel like, when I'm writing a script, it's like, I know exactly where I want to go, but I'll get to like one sentence and it'll be like, well, I'm going to state this fact absolutely, but this is the wizarding world's very big. And if it just so happens that there's proof that this absolute thing that I'm hinging the next part of my argument on is false, then the whole video is going to fall apart right here. So I either need to find all those bases and cover them and explain them away, or just like confirm that indeed this is the one true fact. And it's very weird too, especially because all these like facts a lot of times you're dealing with are like from a fictional place.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's where I think even sources become interesting because like you can find telltale of a time J.K. Rowling declared Hagrid something, But then if like there's no real concrete evidence of that, then like all you're ever going off of is hearsay, and it's like, well, that doesn't feel like the best way to back it up. Like I want the real thing.
Yeah, I don't like going into like creating a theory and having just so many assumptions.
Yes.
Like one of the most universal assumptions that you have to make is like, we're just going to say these movies are for sure connected, and then we can proceed with this.
Right.
Sure. And I think like if you're speaking to the tune of like the Pixar theory, like the idea that like all of the Pixar movies are in one central universe, it's like to know our YouTube channel is to know that we buy into that theory.
Yeah,
so
right.
it's like if you want to squabble over that, then like in some way you might have missed the point of like what we're doing
Right.
here. Like that is the fun of it. Like we're going to assume that that's true, even if our own common sense tells us like you've had so many different directors and writers and animators,
Right.
and
Yeah.
And they couldn't possibly be fact checking every little thing to make sure that it all fits in this one universe that they're secretly hiding from you, but sort of showing you at the same time. It's like,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when anytime we make a Pixar theory video and people are like, Pixar, this disproves the whole theory, you're just like, okay, the door's over there, man. Like, I don't think this is your party, right?
Right,
Like,
yeah, like-
you're on the wrong turret.
which is fine. It's like you don't have to buy into it, but it's like that is what we do,
Right.
like for the people who do buy into it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So just find another video.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of YouTube to be watched.
Yeah.
sure.
Have we already talked about everything?
We talked about so much stuff.
Oh man.
We got through a lot of ideas.
I love that.
I had all these lists of questions. See, some people, when they get onto the podcast, they're very like, we'll answer a question decisively and then that's it. And then we'll go back. But especially with you both here, you're able to just like go off of each other and then like fully start to like explore your process and everything.
So we're just super rambling.
I have this like concern every time we've ever been on a podcast where I feel like Jay and I communicate in a way that I frequently feel like we box out the host of the show. and there have been a couple of times here where I'm like, shut it down, Ben. Shut it down.
Yeah, let him back in. Let him back in.
You're talking too much.
Well, I mean, that kind of makes sense if you're going to be in like the creative collaboration that you kind of do, is that you have to go back and forth so much when you're like working on things. How have you looked at both of your differences and acknowledged that and then divvied up the responsibilities of what you've created?
Oh, I mean,
good question.
that question goes such a long way because in a lot of ways, creating a YouTube channel and maybe in the manner that we have done it in, which I'm not sure if it's the atypical manner. I feel like we fall somewhere between a full studio of people and the person in the room with a laptop.
Right.
Where we have created kind of like a business around what we do, and our division of responsibilities basically are just fully reflected inside of that. So like Jay went to school with kind of the intention of becoming a reporter or, potentially a news anchor someday. But I went to school with the intention of basically running my own businesses. I majored in entrepreneurial management. And so that's where like a lot of creating the business, finding ways to keep it sustainable and figuring out how to make all of that come together becomes a huge part of like what I do.
Right.
Which doesn't mean that all of my responsibilities necessarily directly go into video production in the same way that I feel like they do for Jay.
Yeah, it's definitely like we have like Ben does a lot more business than I do a lot more like creative, but we both obviously league over into the other quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
And but that is, let's say, how we typically sort of divvy it up, more or less. Like, I mean, I edit a lot of the videos, and like Ben's very good at like outlining everything and getting everything in like this big mind web on our whiteboard. Then typically we'll hand it to me and I'll put it into like a script itself.
Right. That's I think where my my writing talents I feel like hit their cap. Is where I'm like, I'll if I have an idea for something, I'll have gone through and I'll backed it up with all the facts and everything. And I'll be like, I think yesterday's video, we were talking about Argus Filch, going back to Harry Potter, potentially being a poltergeist. And sort of this like anti-Peeves character. And it's never described specifically that he is this, but there's enough that you can go off of to make the explanation make sense. And so, yeah, like I think yesterday when we started our writing session, it was basically me going up there and I had my whole argument on the board and I was like, what do you think? And Jay's like, I think it works. So, and then he's able to articulate it in the very deliverable, easily digested manner that we try to find with our video.
Yeah, because I think you guys do a really good job of being able to present your arguments while still making it extremely entertaining and very like engaging and having all of the like the inside jokes. I think you do a really good job of getting to that point after you've constructed your argument.
Yeah. Well, one of the challenges I think that we've come across is the fact that we're like a fandom channel, and so often the reason people find us isn't because they're like fans of, Jonathan and Ben Carlin. It's because they're a fan of, Harry Potter or Star Wars or whatever. And they're like, why are lightsabers different colors? Click. And, they don't really necessarily care that we're the people presenting it. They just care about the information that we are presenting. So that's where I think it's really important to try and develop that sort of like internal set of like inside jokes and branding and like, welcome to the channel. If you've been here for a while, you'll get these jokes, and if you don't, then I hope you stick around.
Then it might not make sense. But I mean, that is part of the art form of ever delivering an inside joke is trying. It's like a Marvel movie, It's like, do I need to have seen all the other ones like for this to make sense? And it's like, no. There might be a couple things that make more sense if you understand the reference.
Sure.
And I feel like that's a line that we toe, but I also love those inside jokes because I feel like so many of them are more us getting to like play improv a little bit, where they're not necessarily written into the script. It's something like where we're in the room and of course we're surrounded by memorabilia because, part of like our set is just having all the stuff lined up against the wall. And very frequently it's like, hey, hand me that thing real quick. I'm going to try a thing.
Right.
And it's like, and then it totally lands and it becomes like a fun joke from then on.
Yeah.
Sure.
You can revisit and stuff.
Right.
So in the process of, working on this YouTube channel and developing it, at what point did you realize that this was going to be something that you wanted to do long term and that would have to be created into a business?
Well, that is a good question. I'd say so that initial YouTube channel I had that we talked about earlier, that was like, when I was doing that, it was sort of like, that was the very early YouTube. So there weren't like really big YouTube people yet, or like there were, but it was, are even they making money, or is that like a thing they could do for their career? It was like, less than 50 people maybe that were at that potential level. But it felt like sort of a pipe dream thing. Like if I could just earn any amount of money, like that was sort of my goal. Like if I could get to that point. And then that, died off. I got a real job. And then we launched Super Carlin Brothers a couple years later. And at that point, it was like, it remained the pipe dream and almost like was like a bigger goal. Like, oh, could this be my full-time thing? Like, I really, really want it to be.
Right.
But even then, like, it has evolved so much further past what like my wildest vision of that was, because at the time I had a full-time job and I would come home and I would, get home write the video, shoot the video, edit the video, make the thumbnail, all that.
And then spend the rest of the night trying to convince your wife to not be upset with you for having spent your entire day working and then working.
Right. Right. Exactly. Fortunately, Beth and I were only actually married for about, when did we get married? June. So like 4 months of time before I was full-time YouTube.
You executed the bait and switch just expertly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole, like, I have a stable career. I work for a company that has been around forever. It's not going anywhere. 4 months later, I'm going into business for myself.
Yeah, that's right. No, she was enormously supportive.
She was, absolutely. Can attest.
Really
the whole family has been.
Yeah. But I think what we found in YouTube was like in my mind, I was like, if I can scrap together enough money from this little video project I'm doing, I will take a significant pay cut to just do full-time YouTube,
Right.
I'll abandon my current, I'll do that. That was sort of where I was. But the way it escalated, there was no middle ground. It was like you were making some, and then it was like, you could live on this.
Right.
But the scary part was like, did you just have a good month? Or is this going to like die back down? Or is this like a consistent thing? And I remember like the week the first week I was full time was like simultaneously like the lowest our numbers had been in like 5 months or something. And I was like, oh no.
It was like the first time they had gone down literally since they had started going up, and it was like, what? No, what could have happened?
Yeah.
And I think that as every year that goes by, I continue to be shocked that we still have a fully functioning business that continues to grow. I think that I think that my worst case scenario brain operates in this environment of like, you're on borrowed time. It's like you have got to live the life for such a period of time. Now go back and become an accountant or something.
Right. Yeah. That's like one of those terrible like, I don't think I could ever have a real job again.
Right. Right.
I sometimes I find myself like mentally prepared for like, it could happen. I'm like, no.
That's what I worry about, is that I just feel like, this is just something that inevitably will not be able to sustain itself, or something will like impede the main thing that's keeping everything afloat.
Sure. And the glory behind this particular sentiment means that all of us love what we do enough to where what's really happening is you fear somebody or somehow it get taken away from you. So I feel like there's a lot to be said for the fact that it also means you're getting to live what you consider to be a dream job.
Right, exactly. Like that's where the fear comes from. It's like it's so much fun. Not that it's not hard or anything, but it's like, this is what you want to be doing so badly that you can't, fathom it being taken away.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like if, YouTube is no longer the main platform and now you have to make short form content on something like TikTok. It's like, is that really the only option now, or a normal job? Like, I don't want to ever even get to that point. Like, I just feel like YouTube is such a great place for the things that we like to make.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, I think we were actually talking about it as we were walking into the podcast booth here. We were sort of describing how we keep talking about like our channel as like a business in a way, and businesses have mission statements, and from the very beginning we never had a mission statement. It was never like there was a specified goal. It was sort of something that we were doing as brothers, and it was like an activity that we could do together, and it just seemed to continuously go forward. And I feel like what we kept expressing is that we wanted it to be a place where people could celebrate their fandom. And that sort of has become our slogan, sort of kind of like inadvertently.
Right. I mean, it's in the intro. It is what we're going for. You want it. I think because when I was growing up, there was always this like a little bit of like shame in liking some of the stuff that we now talk about.
Sure.
All the time. Like
100%.
It's you're in high school now. You're not really allowed to like outwardly like Harry Potter or like Pixar movies or, whatever it is. And it was just like, I always hated that. It was just like, I always felt like I had to like keep these like interests secretive and like only enjoy them like in the privacy of my own room or something.
Sure.
And it was just like that just sucks. And the more we talked about it, it was just like, these people are out there. Like there's tons of people that like were clearly experiencing that exact same thing. And it's just like, yeah, if we can make a spot, or you can like show people that like, no, there are people out there like you who love these things, and you can talk about those things with those people safely in like a, supportive environment. Like that's really what we're going for at
Sure.
this point.
Right, and I feel like it's given a lot of confidence to the idea of like if somebody made fun of me for being like a so-called expert on Disney princesses as a 30-year-old guy, I would just sort of be like, well, you're free to think that, but it does not affect the way that I feel about
Right.
it at all.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly how I felt. Like, once I got into like junior high and high school, it felt like being able to watch animated films was just something that wouldn't be accepted.
Right.
And something that you just like didn't really talk about. And it wasn't like I was trying to hide it, but it just didn't feel like something that I could like go and start expressing to people.
You weren't going
Right.
to wear it on your sleeves necessarily.
No. Yeah.
And that, like, I think even would have been like a barrier at some point in time. Like if we were in high school and had done something so public as, you know, make a YouTube channel, like where people all of a sudden are like, did you know the Carlin brothers are like talking about Harry Potter, like
Right.
on this YouTube channel? It's like, it's so frustrating that this is the case, but there is a period of time where you may have received ridicule with that. And then there is a point in time after that where it becomes the coolest possible thing about you.
Yeah, right.
Like I have run into people from high school who I never make the assumption that anybody has any idea like what I'm doing. And it seems like every time I run into an old classmate, they're always like, oh my God, yeah, I've heard about all your like success on YouTube. And it's like, really? Like you?
Me? You? No.
That can't be.
I had a similar experience where I went to, like, my friend was coming back from the Navy and had a big bonfire for his birthday, and I went over there, and they were like, oh, look, Watso! And I'm like, all these guys from, like, the football team, I was like, oh, hey! What's up, guys? I totally hung out with you guys.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I wonder if any amount of that is your own failed perception of what's happening. Like maybe you have this interpretation in a high school that, you know, the jocks have their way about going about life. But like maybe in reality they were like, yeah, why didn't Isaac ever come over and just talk to us? Like we would have loved to have spent time with him.
I think that's probably fair. Like, it was
Yeah.
probably just more of my...
You're like, yeah, everyone like has a chip on their shoulder, but no one realizes they put it there.
Sure, yeah, there you go. That's it. I like that sentiment. I like that sentiment.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the longer I do YouTube, the more I feel open to express the things that I actually like.
Sure.
And I think that's really cool that we have similar ideas of the places that we're trying to create on YouTube and other social media platforms, similar goals. Was there ever a time that you thought you wouldn't be able to keep going and doing this once you started to make it be more serious in your lives?
I would say there was probably, there was a couple of moments throughout, like right when we started to make this shift over to like full-on fandom content, like that was is that like the middle of year 3 or so, I think?
Somewhere in that
Somewhere
range,
around there, because the first 2 years, like this year 2, we'd had like one or, you know, that's where we did the Pixar Theory, and we had like the Andy's Mom Theory, and I think we had like a couple Star Wars things in there, but they were not the norm. They were just sort of here and there, and those were clearly the most successful videos that we were doing. And it had gotten to the point in, I think somewhere in the middle of the 3rd year where the project was not like really yielding anything for us, like money-wise, and it was like starting to just take a lot of time, and it was just like, I don't know if it's worth it. And we like just made the decision, like, let's just dive in and do just the, like, try and just do the Disney stuff. Like, let's just do it. And like we made that one little pivot, and it was like gangbusters.
Yeah.
So I think maybe if we had not done that, there was a chance that we could have just like eventually been like, I don't know if it's really worth it anymore. Like we gave it a really good run. Like no one could say we didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that was an interesting period of time because we were definitely getting a little bit like worn out, and it seemed like we had spent like a whole lot of time, and like I think probably grand total after several years of doing it, we had maybe netted like a few $100s or something. Like it wasn't like any, it wasn't even like you had like a side gig, like a part-time job would have paid more.
Right. It was just like beer money.
Right, exactly. quite literally.
Yeah.
And so if you ever were to go back and like rewatch through the Super Carlin Brothers series, I think the pivotal period of time, Jay made a video called the Top 5 Snubbed Disney Princesses.
Yes.
I feel like that particular video, like if one day we ever reached some level of like something, then I think we could look back on that thumbnail. And
that's like the turning point for me. I think I look at that video. That's also the week you started doing Fast Facts for the first time.
Yes. And so the Fast Facts series was like just so poorly made. Like they're really not good. I mean, it was a period of time where I don't even think we would have called ourselves like quote unquote, experts or whatever term you might want to use to describe people who have leaned in super deep. And so if anything, I was just trying to do a lot of research to figure out like what all the other Easter eggs Pixar had hidden in their films and stuff. And I was like, well, this is a good way for me to learn all this stuff. But we didn't own all of the movies. So, and I didn't even know how to put movie clips in my videos at this point in time. So if I couldn't either find a screenshot of it somewhere on the internet,
right,
I would literally sometimes buy the movie with my own money, find the Easter egg that I'm trying to describe, and I would take a picture of it with my phone.
Yeah.
Like off the TV screen.
Making it work.
And then use that and be like, the Pizza Planet truck can be found right out here outside of this, whatever. And the picture that you're seeing on screen is literally a picture I took with my phone at the time and just put over top of my audio. But the thing is that like that period of time for me was so important to the way that like I viewed the channel and my contributions to it and anything. Cause like they were getting views despite the fact that they were not good.
Right. Like all of us. Yeah, there was. Yeah. And that was when I think, we just started seeing a ton of success every single week. And it was really fun to like watch it and stuff. And then maybe the only other time we've come close, I don't even know if we were really ever like that close to like abandoning it, but in that like little period of time post marriage, pre full-time YouTube, there was sort of this like, oh, I've got like a mortgage and I've got like a wife now, and I really do need to start, like make a decision like more firmly about my future. It's not just about me anymore.
Yeah. Right.
And there was like that sort of, this project takes up a lot of time every single week, and that wasn't really like a problem for me. But the problem was that like as long as YouTube, the possibility of going like full-time on YouTube was like out there in front of me, I was never going to really be 100% focused on my like actual job that I had at the time. And it was like as long as I could maybe do this, I'm not going to care about that.
Right. Yeah.
So it was like either we need to get to the point where we are full-time on YouTube, or I just need to like stop and like really just focus on actually having a regular career.
Yeah.
And didn't decide to do that. Decided to go for YouTube. that was good. It worked out. It's been working out so far anyway.
I feel like to go away from YouTube now, it would take a lot out of whatever was going on. Like the channel would have to be like completely crippled for me to completely abandon it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too. Like we've talked about that a lot, like where, we've reached a point where, along the way we had like a target salary we wanted to hit, and like pretty much we hit that, and then that was like everything else just goes into building the business.
Right.
But there is certainly an amount of distance between either YouTube's decline, fandom decline, Pixar taking a hard left turn into Nowheresville, whatever the case may be, where interest just gets lost completely,
right?
Or this nostalgia era ends. Because I do think we live in an era, like a period of time where people look back on like what they watched from their childhood,
right?
And now they're like reliving that joy as as an older person. But there's a certain amount of distance that we could go and continue to still live a very comfortable life, just not growing a digital, I don't want to call it an empire.
Yeah.
What is a word?
Use that word.
Yeah. Yes, the emperor. I am Emperor Palpatine.
A digital republic.
A digital republic. There you go. That's what I'm going for there.
Yeah.
So you've been able to accomplish a lot going on this journey. what was the most surreal moment for you guys that you couldn't believe you were doing because of the huge YouTube channel that you had been building?
Oh man, I can tell you, I know exactly when that moment was, and it was when we were standing in the same room as J.K. Rowling. That was it. It still is.
That was an unbelievable day.
Yeah.
I feel like I can't even truly describe like what it was like, because it was a weird thing to witness.
Yeah.
But you had circa what's called 100 people in the room who were some version of a content creator that somehow revolves around Harry Potter. And everyone, every single person who's standing there's life has been changed by these 7 books that were written when we were kids. And so people regard this person in such a way that like you would expect, like if a celebrity walks on stage at a concert or walks out of the stadium from a big game or something, crowds cheer, it's lots of noise, it's excitement. It was the opposite.
It was.
Like she walks in and 100 people fall silent.
Like, stop breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really weird. I mean, the whole weekend while we were there was like a big Harry Potter trip. Like everything you did was Harry Potter, and it was to promote the Crimes of Grindelwald or whatever. So everyone there had like seen the Cursed Child the night before.
Right.
And they'd already been given this like little, pack from Warner Brothers with all this cool Harry Potter swag. And they like told you like that morning, like, we're going to go see J.K. Rowling. And you're like, oh my God, I don't believe it. And like, you already know the rest of your day, you're going to be meeting, you're going to like see a preview of the trailer, and you're going to get to meet some of the cast members. And you're just like such on a Harry Potter high, and to like have this surprise thrown at you. It was crazy. But that was one of the most surreal experiences just of my life. Cause like Ben said, she walks in the room and you might expect people to cheer. It was just like silence. It was like really weird. Not, but like silent, like respectful silence,
Right,
it
right.
Was,
like in no way, shape, it was like deafening silence. Is the best way to describe it.
That's a great way to put it.
Like it wasn't like shockingly underwhelming. It was like a crazy,
trying to be respectful to this person.
It's just like no one wanted to miss a single moment. You're like, she's here. Oh my God, what's she gonna do? Where's she gonna go? Is she gonna like? Oh my God, she's coming towards us. Oh my,
Right. Like, so like I think grand total we might have been in the same room as her for 4.5 minutes. Like
sure.
The whole thing was like it wasn't like a long period of time at all. It's not like we had to have a jovial conversation, invited her to Christmas dinner or something.
Yeah.
But even the amount, like I think my brain like absorbed every single second of it.
Oh
like
yeah.
It was very much in like, okay, this is recording right now. Like this is I need this information to stay with me.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, people were crying,
Yeah.
Anyone she physically touched, instant crying. Instant tears.
Yeah. It was very if you want something very fun to watch, go watch Tessa Netting's video about meeting J.K. Rowling.
That's what I was thinking of. Was her just sobbing.
She was sobbing for like an hour though.
Right. Yeah, it was really something special. And I know this is a slight tangent from this story, but the literal next week we were going down to Disney World to work with Disney on a project. And so like within
2 weeks,
within like 5 days of meeting J.K. Rowling, we were literally standing in the Magic Kingdom before it opened, like with this orange glow sunrise.
Oh yeah.
And like we're just like walking underneath the castle. We're taking the selfies nobody can ever take where there's no one else in the shot. Like that was an experience where you're like, we're here. Like we're like
this is happening.
Like, there's no other people. Like this is unbelievable. Yeah. So that was cool too.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, that was cool.
It sounds so fun. Would you say that like J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter was the most influential fandom that you experienced growing up? Or what were the fandoms or the experiences that really resonated with you that would lead you to make your channel?
Right. I would say as like children, probably the biggest one for us was Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like we were enormously into Star Wars. I have, we still have tons of action figures just sitting in like my attic, and we watched the movies over and over and over. And they like re-released them. And then the prequels came out, and it was just like, that was really a big one as we were kids. And then Harry Potter, I guess we were a little bit older for that. And always like, we, of course, really loved the books. And then in particular, that was something me and my wife bonded over a lot, was Harry Potter stuff, like while we were dating and stuff. And we went to different colleges. So they were like 2 hours apart. So in the process of visiting one another, there'd be like, 4 hours of driving over the weekend or something. So as like a continuous gift, she kept getting me the like books on CD, so I would have something to listen to while I was coming to visit her. So I would just listen to them over and over and over. And then, you get home and of course you're not quite done with the book yet. And, you keep listening to it for another, 2 weeks in the car until you get to the end and you're like, well, may as well just listen to the next one and figure out what happens, And so like every trip to go see my girlfriend turned into like, well, now I'm going to read another book. And that would, happen at least once a month, if not more.
Right. Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, we definitely started as Star Wars kids. I remember when Mom bought the VHS 3-pack at Sam's Club one day, and we would have like movie Sundays,
right?
Like, where it was Sunday night in our family, and we would watch a movie. And so 3 weeks in a row, we watched A New Hope, Empire, and Return of the Jedi. And I think we just got hook, line, sinker. Like we were so into it. And the big thing, like when we were a kid, it seems like $5 was the way that our parents would like get us to do anything, or like it was the way you would celebrate like scoring a goal in soccer, or if you lost a tooth, like the tooth fairy left you $5, which happened to be the exact amount of money it cost to buy a Star Wars action figure.
Right.
And so we would like go to the store, and if we like, I feel like we knew, like we had memorized like everything you had, and so like if there was a new figure there, like we knew it was a new one.
Right. Like,
but if there were 2 new ones, stay with me now, we would take the other one that we weren't going to get, go to the Barbie aisle and like hide it behind like a huge row of like, Barbie doll houses, so that the next time we were there, we could go back to that aisle and it would still be hidden behind this like giant row of toys. So
right, where no one was checking.
We had our strategies.
Oh, we
as
had
kids.
strategies. Yeah, we were good. We had lots of Star Wars toys.
That's funny, because I remember action figures when I was growing up were $7.
Oh.
No.
Yeah.
So 2 teeth, but then you'd have a little extra left over.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, I was the same way, that I was like saving up money, getting the action figures as much as I could.
Right. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. So now that you've experienced so much, what are you most proud of that you've experienced throughout your journey, that you've been able to accomplish?
What am I the most proud of?
I know this is going to sound crazy, but like I think the fact that it is a successful, viable business that employs people, is like one of the things that means a lot to me. Like I think even the fact that like we specifically try to make like the wages of our employees competitive and provide benefits. Like I know that those are like, they don't feel like super cool things.
Right.
But like that is something where I feel like we have people in our lives who have come from across the country to come and be a part of our team in Roanoke, Virginia.
Right.
Like people like leaving other states to come here. I think, that's just one of those things that like just means a lot to me. Like I think that, and I just love the people, it's like you get to have like this awesome staff of smart people around you all the time. So
Now you've been able to accomplish so much as well, and you have these people that are depending on you. Where do you see your journey continuing forward now that you've established something? How do you want it to continue to thrive and grow?
What does the digital republic look like?
Yeah. What does the republic look like?
Right.
Who becomes the head of the Senate?
Right. Who is the chancellor?
Chancellor.
Yeah. I don't know. I think at the moment we're still figuring that out, I guess, a little bit. It's a lot of, I guess what we sort of talked about earlier, and sort of that like, oh my gosh, I don't want this to like go away. So it's a lot of like figuring out what can you do to sort of like help future-proof what
the company.
You do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like one of the things we just launched was like we just did coffee. That was like, I guess, a little over a year ago. And, people can subscribe to our coffee, carlinbrotherscoffee.com. Check it out. It's really good. We've been experimenting lately with like different like community building things, like over on our Patreon, and, trying to be more interactive in our like Discord community and stuff like that. And hopefully, I think one of the things that we're trying to work on right now is like, not just like community growth inside like the people who watch us, but community growth like in Roanoke, like trying to create sort of an environment for people who want to be on YouTube, like a place, like a physical space where they can like
come together
and like make stuff and like help each other continue to thrive.
The Death Star.
Yeah. That's right.
We're building a Death Star.
We're coming for you, LA.
That's right.
Yeah, no, it's we've been born and raised here in Roanoke, Virginia, and Jay went to school at Virginia Tech, which is 45 minutes away, and I went to school at Radford University, which is an hour away. So like we've kind of always lived in this like Southwest Virginia region, but it has always served us really well as YouTubers, I think at least, where we know like a lot of our friends who are LA based, and the cost of living here, for one, is like reasonable.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're on YouTube, you make the same amount of money regardless of where you live. You know,
Right.
It's not taking into consideration cost of living. So for us being here, it works out super well, and as a result, we would almost like to see if we can encourage others to just be a part of our system, I guess.
Right.
So that's what we're after.
That's really cool. And it's like an ambitious goal to compete with other places that creators could go. But I think it makes sense when you're already establishing yourself and have a desire to grow something larger.
Right. Absolutely. So that's the thing where it's figuring out how to properly lay those foundations and how to structure the approach to bringing others this way. Which, by the way, we have a meeting tomorrow. Watso.
Which I'm very excited for.
Audible wink wink.
So another thing is the coffee company.
Yeah.
What was the process like out of all of the opportunities that were ahead of you for expanding what you were doing, how did you decide that coffee was going to be the exciting new venture that you're going to dive into?
It's sort of a weird story. It wasn't like oh man, we should start a coffee company moment.
I mean, I think when it comes down to it, there's some element of right place, right time.
For sure.
So there was that. So I will let you continue.
Okay. Yeah. Basically, we were working with a manager at the time, and they were like, "Are there any specific brands you want me to try and reach out to, or anyone we can you'd be excited to work with?" And at the time, we had a subscription service to Death Wish Coffee, which not as good as ours. But at the time, we were like, "Oh man, if you could work with we were we followed them on Instagram, and Ben had won one of their online Twitter poetry contests or something.
Right.
Award-winning poet, my brother.
Yes, indeed.
And so I don't know. We were like, oh yeah, if you could that was who we suggested was if we could work with Death Wish Coffee or really any coffee company, because we consumed a lot of coffee, which I guess maybe you don't, Isaac, but I know many a YouTuber who lives on this stuff.
Right.
And it just so happened that this manager lived in the same building in Orlando as a guy who runs a chain of coffee companies down there called Foxtail Coffee, and it just so happened that guy was one of the founding members of I forget what multi-channel network it was. It was the one that Disney bought.
Oh.
Right, so you had a coffee person who was YouTube minded.
Right.
That's basically what it came down to.
He left the MCN world, decided to go into the coffee world, and then was sort of merging those two things. I guess the coffee company themselves is very branded to the Orlando area. They don't want to expand out of there.
Sure.
But they were like, how can we then also sell to people who don't live here? And the way he thought to do that was to just develop a brand of coffee around a YouTuber, and then they'll roast all the beans there, and we'll just sell it nationwide to our audience. And so he was like, would you guys have your own brand of coffee? And we were like, yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
When do we start?
Yeah, and that was sort of just how it started. And from there, they watched a bunch of our videos, and we had a bunch of phone calls to see if we were a good fit, and they liked what we saw or what they saw, and we came down and visited and tried so much coffee.
Yeah,
Really?
there was one morning where I literally thought my heart was gonna come out of my chest, because we had sat down and we wanted to curate our particular blend, which meant drinking 3 sips of every single type of bean imaginable from all over the globe, and we finally came up with ours, and then designed a bag, which was my favorite part.
Oh, it was fun.
And just sort of pieced the whole thing together, and it's become just a very seamless fit for us, I think. Internet culture drinks coffee, and we're a part of internet culture, and we drink coffee, and the bag is covered with Easter eggs, and there's just I feel like it just became a seamless integration, and people have been very supportive. So it's become, it's been really fun. I think probably my favorite thing is getting tagged in Instagram photos when people get the coffee and they're like, oh my gosh, I just made my first cup. It's amazing. And I'm like, yay.
Right.
Yeah, that's really cool that you've made a product that you really care about.
Right.
And that you consume yourself.
Yes. It is literally the coffee we drink in our own office. So
And every day.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I know that we're running short on time. I'd just like to ask one more question for
Yes.
you. What would you give as the number one piece of advice for people that are looking to follow their dreams?
Ooh.
I mean, you got to go for it. You got to take that first step. Oh, gosh. Looking to follow their dreams. How does one follow their dreams? Like, okay, here's the thing, is that whenever you're setting out on something like this, there's a million reasons not to do anything.
Right.
Like, it's so easy to talk yourself out of it because you don't have this equipment or you don't have this thing or whatever. But it's like, you know what? At some point, you got to go take a picture of the TV screen and put it in your video because you can't let that stop you. You know, is it the best thing? Is it the absolute best way you could do it? Maybe not, but you are doing it. And that's
That was
how
a beautiful callback, by the way.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's like I actually have the same mental argument with myself about, you know, going to the gym or something, where if it's like if you have to wake up early and you're tired, but I enjoy going. The thing that my fiance and I always say to each other is you'll never regret going. And I think that's like you never get home from the gym and you're like, I would have rather just stayed in bed for an extra hour. It's like you're like proud of yourself. You're fired up. Your endorphins are firing. Like,
Yeah.
you know, everything's good. So I think that like that can also be true for things that intimidate you. And I think a lot of times chasing your dream is the scariest thing in the world to do because you're afraid the results might disappoint you.
Right, because you're afraid you might fail.
Right.
But at the same time, if it's like really your dream, then like that fear will like drive you that much harder.
Right.
Especially once you start, because like failing is so much worse at that point. That's the thing though. It's like you get this like brain crack where you like build up an idea so much in your mind that like if you can't deliver on exactly what that is, it like keeps you from doing it, and the longer you don't do it, the bigger it gets, and it's like it's harder. So it's like you just have to break through, because that goes away pretty quickly once you start, but it's hard to overcome that very, very first hill.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The initial activation energy can be hard, but if you can get over it, you can get to a much better place. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, guys. It's been a pleasure to be able to hear your story and to be able to discuss what you guys have been doing and what you're doing in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, man.
Absolutely, yeah. It has been so much fun. We've got to spend the last several days with Isaac here, who is just a sheer delight in person.
Indeed.
we talk about the difference between being on camera versus how people are in reality, and I tell you, Isaac, I think you do a great job in person. Like,
Thank you.
like. That transfer, like I think when I walked in the door the other day, you actually beat me to my own office. And I walked in, and you're just beaming. You're like, "Hey, what's going on? Good to see you." And we hugged, and it was the best. So anyway,
Thank you.
for those of you at home who are wondering, Isaac is just a truly sunshine and rainbow type of person.
That's going to be on the autobiography someday.
Yes.
Quoted by Ben Carlin.
Quoted by Ben Carlin. Oh my gosh, yes.
To all of you who are listening, if you haven't seen the Super Carlin brothers work before, you can find links to everywhere they are on the internet in the description. You probably have already seen them already, but just to let you know, you can find them more down there. If you enjoyed this discussion, let me know by rating the podcast and subscribing. And also make sure to follow my Instagram and Twitter at Watso Videos, which is WOTSO Videos, and consider supporting this show by supporting me over on Patreon, which will also be linked below. To all of you fun people who are out in the world, thanks for listening and have a magical day.